This line, built in 1854, was the first public horse-drawn railway in Australia. It wasn't converted to steam until 1885. Today, the track and the trains that run on it are owned and operated by Steam Ranger Tours, the operating arm of the Australian Railway Historical Society. This is RX 224, built in 1915. The line runs from Goolwa at the mouth of the Murray River to Port Elliot and then on to Victor Harbour on South Australia's southern coast. The beaches of Goolwa have always been popular with travellers and famous for their cockles, and this train has always been known as the Cockle train, even in official railway correspondence. Unlike the engines at Peterborough and Quorn, RX 224 is a broad gauge loco. Originally, the colonies of Australia agreed to adopt the standard gauge for all their railways. Then New South Wales decided to opt for broad gauge at the recommendation of an Irish engineer, and the other colonies obligingly agreed to follow suit. When the Irish engineer was replaced by a Scottish one, New South Wales decided to re-adopt the standard gauge. But for South Australia, it was too late. This line, as well as several others, were already under construction, and locomotives and rolling stock had been bought. The problem was further compounded in the 1860s when financial depression meant adopting the cheaper narrow gauge for the long northern lines. Hence, Australia inherited an unwieldy system of 3 different railway gauges. The RX class were the mainstay of the South Australian railways for many years. They began life as the R class in 1866, and at the turn of the century were upgraded with larger boilers and reclassified as RXs. In 1926, a big engine policy was introduced to the railways, and the RXs were replaced on the main line by the 500 class. They continued to service some country lines until they were relegated to shunting work. They were finally phased out in the 1960s, 100 years after they were first introduced. Victor Harbour, the last stop on the run, and where the loco will be turned for the return trip. The passengers disembark at the station, while the engine crew uncouple the engine. The crew of the Cockle train and most of the staff of Steam Ranger are volunteers. Some are ex-railway employees, but others, like John Smythe, gained their knowledge and skills through the society.
Well, this is an RX class built in 1915 by Walkers Limited in Queensland. It was one of a number of classes that were built in three different places, three different localities in England, Queensland and by the railways in South Australia at Islington. There were lots of them and they went everywhere in the South Australian railway system. Well, they were the workhorse of the system for a good many years. At the start of this century, they worked passenger trains and goods trains all over the state. I'm not a professional railwayman. I was taught by some very skillful railway people and thoroughly enjoying it.
If RX 224 is to survive, she'll have to come off the rails soon for a major rebuild. But in Steam Ranger's workshops, RX 207 is waiting to take her place at the head of the Cockle train.